They called it a ceremony of correction. The broadcast began at precisely Galactic Standard 9000, as scheduled. No delay, no fanfare. 30 human women stood shoulder to shoulder on a platform of polished black stone, each draped in a white robe, each wearing the same expression, something between solemn pride and a quiet joke not shared with the crowd. The Emperor of the Harmonized Spheres gave the address. His voice was a layered chorus, engineered to calm. These subjects, having disrupted cultural cohesion and promoted forbidden musical thought forms, are hereby cleansed for the greater order of the galaxy. On screen, a silver beam flashed across the women's spines. They slumped, elegant, human, final. The galaxy watched in a silence that wasn't quite grief. Discomfort? Perhaps. A bit of curiosity, somewhere. But mostly relief. Humans had always been strange. Chaotic. Their smiles didn't match their eyes. Still, even those who approved found it odd that none of the women screamed. Not one cried out. Most unsettling of all, 2 of them smiled at the camera. That unsettled even the Zarn, who didn't believe in emotion. 3 planets over, on a temperate moon in the neutral zone, the Galactic Council convened. They did not discuss the executions. Not directly. Too messy. Too recent. Instead, they opened the floor to Ambassador Helena Ward of Earth. She entered the hall alone. She wore a navy blue dress suit with creases so sharp it seemed they might cut air. No armor. No guards. Just a leather-bound folder in her gloved hands and a string of pearls at her throat. Some aliens muttered at her arrival. Others avoided eye contact. One particularly bulbous envoy from the Hreth laughed aloud and turned to his neighbor. Why do humans wear the dead teeth of sea creatures? Helena turned her head and smiled. Wide, warm, and terrible. Oh, do forgive the pearls. I wear them when I mourn. The laughter stopped. She took her place before the dais and opened her folder with delicate, deliberate care. The Earth Council acknowledges the sovereign right of the Harmonized Spheres to legislate within its own domain, she said, voice gentle, motherly even. However, the unlawful termination of 30 civilian women, each under protected cultural envoy status, violates 9 interstellar treaties, and more importantly, she paused. Let the moment breathe. The threshold of human patience. The chamber blinked. Patience? They had expected rage. Humans were emotional, weren't they? Loud? Prone to tears, threats, maybe even violent outbursts. Instead, this woman spoke like a librarian reprimanding a particularly rude child. The Zarthian delegate, a 6-eyed strategist known for his disdain of emotion, leaned forward. Ambassador Ward, with respect, what action does your species propose in response? Protests? Petitions? Another sad melody beamed into space. Helena looked up from her notes. Oh no, General. That's all been scheduled. She turned the folder around and held up a single page. It was a calendar. A simple human paper calendar, with a red circle drawn around a date 2 days away. This is the countdown, she said. There was a pause, one of those silences that comes before thunder. The Emperor's envoy, a crystalline being named Solarka, clicked impatiently. Are you threatening the Council with a schedule? Helena nodded, her smile widening by degrees. We are your radiance. Solarka pulsed with shifting light, then laughed. How very human. Your threats are as primitive as your food. Valeth of the Brineborn chimed in. Yes, I hear you fry things in oil and keep animals indoors. Your ships smell like cinnamon and socks. And yet, Helena murmured, we always seem to win the long wars. The laughter wavered. There was something too measured in her tone, too calm. It wasn't a bluff. It wasn't even a warning. It was a statement of fact. The Grothic Chancellor, a being bred for emotionless negotiation, adjusted its vocal modulators. Forgive us, Ambassador, but Earth lacks the force projection to challenge the Empire militarily. Your moon base has been dismantled. Your fleets are docked. You haven't launched a carrier in 5 years. Helena closed the folder. Yes, we've been quiet. She folded her hands gently. We baked. We built schools. We taught our children to sing. She looked up, eyes unblinking. Now you've silenced the choir. Another silence, this one sharp. The youngest member of the council, a feathered diplomat from Jiruscan, whispered. Why were they smiling? The emperor's envoy scowled. Because they were weak and sentimental. Helena turned toward him. No, she said softly. Because they were first. A tremor passed through the hall. Helena stepped down from the podium, leaving the folder behind. It sat there like an unexploded device, ordinary on the outside, but unsettling in its stillness. A Slarican bureaucrat leaned over and opened it. Inside was a handwritten recipe. Oatmeal cookies. Makes 30. Bake at 375 degrees for 10 minutes. Optional. Cinnamon. The session was dismissed early. On the far side of the galaxy, the human fleet remained hidden. Not dark, not cloaked, just missing. Absent from space lanes. Absent from scans. As if it had never existed. Back on Earth, the news was oddly silent. No global announcement. No fiery speeches. Just a quiet pause, like the moment before breath becomes a scream. In the Highlands of Scotland, an old woman lit a candle and placed 30 white stones in a circle. In Texas, a boy dug a shallow trench in the shape of a star. In Tokyo, a software update rolled across every civilian drone in service. No patch notes, just a version number and a timestamp. The galaxy waited, watched, whispered, and wondered why the humans hadn't retaliated yet. Surely they would rage. Surely they would protest. But they didn't. They smiled. 2 days later, a courier ship arrived at the Emperor's primary moon. It was unarmed. Civilian. Crew of 1. Helena Ward stepped off the ramp alone, her heels tapping quietly across the marble floor of the Imperial Hall. She carried no folder this time, just a small box tied with a pale ribbon. The Emperor himself deigned to attend. Have you come to surrender? He asked, bored already. Helena tilted her head. I've come to remind. Remind whom? She held out the box. You. The Emperor hesitated, then opened it. Inside were 30 folded pieces of paper. Each one bore the name of a system, one under his command. What is this? He demanded. Helena's voice didn't change. These are your last safe places. What? A small beeping echoed from the box. Harmless. Friendly even. It's just a timer, she said sweetly. We found that it helps when empires panic. Makes things feel cinematic. Explain yourself. She met his eyes, and in them was the weight of 1,000 years of restraint. You killed 30 women because they sang, because they laughed, because they reminded you that your power was fragile. He raised his hand to summon guards. They weren't our weakness, she said, taking a step closer. They were our last tether. She looked past him, toward the stars. And now we remember what we were before peace. In the next 30 minutes, systems began to go dark. Communications failed. Stars flickered. Gravity wavered. Helena turned without another word and stepped back onto her ship. The Emperor stood frozen. In his hand, the last piece of paper simply read, "This is still mercy." The first thing the aliens noticed was the silence. Not the dramatic kind, the kind that follows an explosion or precedes a speech, but something far worse. A procedural, bureaucratic, calculated quiet that came from deep within the human systems. Earth's moon bases, normally alive with sensor noise and chatter about hydroponics and livestock inventories, went dark. Not jammed, not cut, just turned off. Their broadcast logs stopped mid-sentence, as if someone had stood up mid-meal and never returned. The Martian relay satellites sent one last ping, a faint looping broadcast of a little girl singing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." Then they too went quiet. The harmonized spheres laughed, at first. On Imperial talkstreams, military experts chuckled at theatrics. They theorized that Earth was pretending weakness. One particularly smug strategist called it emotional peacocking. Valeth of the Brineborn wrote a treatise titled On the Predictable Overreaction of Lesser Species. It concluded, humans value symbolism over strategy. They would rather send poetry than plasma. But still, the signal stopped. Civilian trade convoys vanished without sending distress. Orbital scans over Sol detected nothing out of place, too perfect, in fact, as if someone had painted over the stars. On Ether 9, in a soundproofed bunker lined with reinforced pearl glass, High Strategos Glycin of the Yulan Clade assembled a team to study the phenomenon. He didn't call it a war. He didn't even call it a threat. He called it a behavioral anomaly. The analysts reported that Earth hadn't mobilized a single fleet. They had, instead, decommissioned several, docked them in neat rows like museum pieces. Earth's outer defense grid wasn't just inactive. It had been dismantled. What kind of species removes its armor after an insult? Glycin hissed through his gills. Back on Earth, Admiral Javier Reyes was brewing tea. The command center beneath the Rockies had no lights, only phosphorescent moss embedded into the walls, giving everything a soft green glow. The air smelled of mint and dust. He stirred his cup with the precision of a surgeon, added a drop of honey, and said to no one in particular, "They think we're planning something." His aide, Captain Rowright, 29 years old and annoyingly fond of sarcasm, grinned. "Aren't we?" Reyes sipped. "We already planned it. Years ago. This is the performance." Rowe leaned back. "So what do we do now?" "We wait for them to understand the scale." Rowe scratched the back of his neck. "And what scale is that, sir?" Reyes didn't look up. "The kind they cannot measure. Thousands of light years away, the Empire lost its first star. Not a sun, but a data star, a virtual hub spanning 4 sectors, housing everything from transit maps to planetary weather patterns. It didn't explode. It didn't go offline. It was simply gone. The code erased. The backups overwritten. The support AIs erased themselves. In its place, a single .txt file. It read, "This is how forgetting begins." Panic hadn't arrived yet. Just unease. Alien diplomats began whispering not about human rage, but about human restraint. It was the restraint that worried them. Reyes once said that humans were the only species in the galaxy who learned how to play chess during wartime, and then invented nuclear weapons during peace. It wasn't emotion that made humans dangerous. It was boredom. In the Galactic Council's secondary chamber, less grand than the main hall, more suited to non-crisis discussions, the surviving members held an emergency session. Helena Ward was not invited, but she arrived anyway. This time, she wore gray. No pearls. Just a ribbon pinned to her collar. A colorless piece of cloth that looked innocent enough, until one ambassador recognized it as the mourning sash of Earth's Terran Defense Accord. It was only worn when the Accord had voted for unanimous, total engagement. She did not speak. She sat in the back and offered peppermint candies to the guards. Valeth entered late and took his seat with the casual arrogance of a species that had never lost a war. He glanced at Helena, offered a toothless smile, and said, "Is this how humans grieve?" "With sweets." Helena unwrapped one herself, popped it into her mouth, and replied, "No. This is how we wait for the others to catch up." One of the Juruscan, a nervous, feathery creature, fidgeted. "Why isn't Earth retaliating?" "They are," whispered a diplomat from the shadows. "But not in the way you think." Across the stars, strange things happened. A mining colony on Taurus 7 vanished. No distress call, no explosion. Just nothing. The orbiting satellites recorded the entire planet dematerializing over 20 minutes, pixel by pixel, like a bad rendering glitch. When the Empire investigated, all they found was a floating sphere, a hollow planet-sized shell made of reflective glass. Inside, 30 tiny music boxes, each playing the same lullaby. The Emperor forbade any public discussion of the incident. He said it was psychological warfare. And he was right, because everywhere he looked, humanity had left something behind. A lunchbox, a paper crane, a dog-eared copy of a poetry book, each item deliberately placed where only the powerful would notice. Each one a reminder. In Reyes' war room, holographic maps were being folded away. No more simulations. No more debates. The staff were gone. Only one long oak table remained, with carved initials from 4 centuries of command. Reyes stood at the head, holding a chess piece between his fingers, a pawn smoothed down by use. He set it down and whispered, "You executed 30 of our women." He pressed a small, rectangular button. Somewhere on the edge of the galaxy, gravity inverted. An imperial colony, the one closest to Earth's historic Mars route, collapsed inward, compacting to the size of a coin. No radiation, no debris, just a new black hole, humming faintly with what some claimed was human song. The Emperor raged behind his crystal throne. He'd ordered counterstrikes, but they'd struck nothing. He ordered arrests, but humans had vanished from imperial territory. He screamed into his translators, "Where are they?" No one knew, not even the surviving spies. Because humanity hadn't gone dark. They had gone quiet. And no one in the galaxy knew how dangerous human silence could be. In a bar on a neutral world, two alien smugglers spoke in hushed tones. "They're everywhere," one said, shaking. "But they don't attack. They just look at you. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they smile." The other one whispered, "That's when you know it's too late." In the council's private archives, a courier delivered an envelope. Paper. Wax seal. Inside, a hand-drawn map. 27 red XS, inked with care. Underneath, in elegant script, "These are where your throne stood." The first planet didn't scream. It simply dimmed. Glaxion Prime, one of the Empire's crown worlds, was known for its sapphire skies and 10-ringed orbital gardens. Its capital city, Varesh, was shaped like a blooming flower, the petals stretching across continent-sized bridges. At precisely 0200 Galactic Standard, every light in Varesh flickered, then vanished. Satellites failed. Power grids stalled. Communication towers bent slowly toward the ground, as if grieving. Orbiting vessels reported one last haunting image. The planet's rings peeling away, layer by layer, like a peeled fruit, before collapsing into a dense, swirling sphere of quiet light. And then stillness. No boom. No rupture. Just erasure. The Empire called it an anomaly, but Earth called it the beginning. Elsewhere, the systems marked with red XS began to fall, not with fire or bombs, but with elegant devastation. Each one unique, each one artistic. On Arvith 3, the gravity reversed in a single city for exactly 37 seconds. Citizens floated gently into the sky, unaware, even joyful, until the air thinned and the warmth faded, and they never came down. On Vendrak, a water world known for its musical tides, the oceans themselves were turned into glass, trapping 1 trillion living beings in a still life sculpture of anguish and beauty. At the center, a single human flag floated upright in frozen motion. No signal accompanied the events. No declaration. No demand. Only a silence that screamed louder than any weapon. Inside the Emperor's war spire, alarms cascaded from floor to floor, an opera of futility. His admirals shouted over one another, searching for a pattern. "We don't know how they're doing this." A crystal aide stammered, "It's not physical warfare, it's conceptual. They're rewriting constants, turning laws of nature against us." "They're just humans," the Emperor roared, slamming a fist into the star map. "They bleed. They break. They cry." A new voice entered the room. Helena Ward in black. Her dress was unadorned. No folder. No trinkets. Just a small brooch. 30 interlocked circles. She did not wait for permission. "You're looking for logic," she said softly, walking through the fire of glances aimed her way. "But you killed the women who sang." The room stilled. 30 cultural envoys, each trained in transharmonic cognition, each embedded in a separate system. They weren't tourists. They weren't citizens. She looked directly at the Emperor. They were conductors. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. Conductors of what? She stepped closer. Of grief. And then Valeth died. He was seated, perfectly still, mid-thought, but his skin translucent and damp, froze solid and fractured down the middle. No cause. No weapon. Just a sudden, irreversible absence of function. His final breath sang 3 notes, E-flat, G-B, a minor chord. "Humanity doesn't wage war," Helena said. eyes soft with something like morning. We compose it. In the void beyond the core systems, humanity's fleets began to reappear. Not in unison, not in force. Like whispers slipping from shadows, the dreadnoughts and stealth carriers eased into known space with the grace of dancers. No lights, no insignia, no warning. Each one drifted silent, above key imperial worlds, then unfurled. Folded armor plates opened like petals. Subtle magnetic pulses tuned the local atmospheres. The ships didn't attack. They simply sang. A low, resonant hum rolled across the surfaces below, just audible enough to make glass quiver, just strange enough to disrupt thought. Animals fled. Children wept without knowing why. Electrical systems hiccuped. Dreams turned incoherent. It was the prelude. On Earth, in an underground chamber layered in sandstone and silence, Admiral Reyes traced lines on a long wooden table. No screens. No AI projections. Just maps. Hand-drawn. Annotated in human script. Beside him, Row Wright watched the update scroll across an old ticker-tape machine, clicking and whirring like something from a forgotten war. Row's voice was low. That's 7 systems in 11 hours. Reyes nodded. We're accelerating. You ever feel weird doing all this without explosions? We tried explosions, Reyes said, sipping tea. They weren't persuasive. He looked to the wall, where a photograph of the 30 women was pinned with brass tacks. None were soldiers. None carried weapons. One wore a shirt that read, "Music is memory." Row asked, "Do you think they knew what they were dying for?" Reyes was quiet a moment. Then, "I think they knew what they were living for." In the Empire's outer colonies, paranoia bloomed. Civilians fled to bunkers. Governors installed soundproofing foam across entire cities. Children were taught to hum off-key to avoid triggering hidden frequencies. Nobody slept, but humanity didn't need to fight them. They needed them to collapse from within. On Brilliant, a university capital, all computers began auto-playing footage of Earth rituals, weddings, funerals, school plays. No malware detected. No source traced. Just raw, unfiltered humanity. An alien professor watched a recording of a 5-year-old girl crying as she played violin. He tried to look away, but something in the imperfection, the aching, untrained purity of it, broke him. He deleted his life's work and walked into the sea. The human ships drifted on. Above each fallen world, they left behind something simple. On Galactic Prime, it was a piano with no keys. On Vendrak, a folded quilt made from alien flags. On Arvith 3, a playground swing, still swaying in a world without gravity. They were not artifacts. They were messages. In the Emperor's private quarters, he finally spoke with Helena Ward alone. No advisors. No audience. He paced, his crystalline robes chiming with tension. "You've won nothing." Helena looked around the room. "I see a man with no throne. A galaxy with no center. Empty cities and ruined stars. Forgive my miscalculation. What is left to win?" He sneered. "You think this is justice?" "No," she said. "This is choreography." He lunged forward, grabbing her by the collar. "We will rebuild. We always rebuild." Helena didn't flinch. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a music box. Small, wooden, handmade. She wound it once. It played the same tune the girl had sung, the one from a Mars relay. Soft, fragile, human. "I know," she said quietly, "because we did." She placed the box on the floor between them. "You call us sentimental," she whispered, stepping back. "But grief is just love that survived." He stared down at the music box, unable to move. As it played, holograms blinked into existence around them, floating projections of the 30 women, each smiling, each glowing faintly. Then, one by one, they dissolved into constellations. Back in Earth's war room, Reyes stood at the threshold of a final command. Row asked, "You sure we want to finish the score?" Reyes looked at the old chessboard beside his terminal. The white pieces had all been removed. Only black remained. "I'm sure," he said, pressing a final switch. The galaxy's gravity grid hiccuped. Not violently, delicately, like the conductor's final flick of the wrist. The war ended not with fire, but with silence. Silence and a garden. In the ruins of what was once the harmonized spheres, the remaining members of the Galactic Council gathered on a drifting diplomatic station, one of the few places untouched by Earth's invisible hand. There was no preamble, no speeches. They sat in a semicircle of broken chairs, facing an empty space where a dais had once stood. Some were scarred, others missing limbs, memories, worlds. Helena Ward entered last. She was dressed not in black or gray, but in green, a deep forest hue, embroidered with vines and leaves. A color of growth. No guard escorted her. No one dared stop her. She stood at the center, alone, as always. Not smiling now, not gloating, just present in the way only humans could be, with weight, with gravity, with something old in the eyes. One of the alien delegates, a Zarnian with artificial lungs, spoke first. "What do you want?" Helena looked at him, gently. "You misunderstand," she said. "This isn't a negotiation. We surrendered," another rasped. "We surrendered days ago." She nodded. "You did. And we've accepted." "Then why are you here?" She placed a small pot on the cracked floor. Inside it, a sprouting plant with delicate white flowers. The leaves quivered slightly, though there was no breeze. "I'm here because what comes after matters more than what came before." A diplomat from the shattered Brineborn collective leaned forward, his voice trembling with something unspoken. Was it revenge? Helena shook her head. "No. Justice." "No." "Then why," he whispered, "why destroy our cities? Why erase our stars? Why the children?" Her voice was quiet, but unflinching. "Because you made us remember." And then she told them what the women truly were, conductors, yes, but also carriers. Each one had been seeded with emotional architectures, coded harmonic frequencies, deeply human cultural impressions, compressed into quantum strands. They had been part of an experiment, a last effort to bridge peace through something more lasting than treaties. Shared art, shared memory, shared ache. The harmonized spheres saw 30 soft voices and mistook them for weakness. So they silenced them. And in doing so, they untethered a species that had tried, desperately, to forget its former shape. "You made us remember what we are," Helena said. "Not monsters. Not conquerors. Something worse." The Jurusken delegate looked up slowly, feathers trembling. "What are you, then?" "Rememberers," she said. "We are the species that does not let go." The room remained still. On Earth, the celebrations were muted. There were no parades, no fireworks, just an odd sort of relief, as if a great weight had lifted, but not joyfully, more like the ache after long-held breath. Admiral Reyes sat in his cabin above a sea of clouds, watching sunlight spill over the Rockies. A radio hummed quietly beside him, playing an old recording of wind chimes and church bells. Roe Wright entered, holding a datapad. "Final report, sir." Reyes took it without looking. Roe hesitated. "We left a lot standing." "We always do." Some of them expected annihilation. They wanted simplicity, victory or defeat. We gave them something else. Roe sat down, suddenly tired. "You think they'll understand?" "No," Reyes said. "But their children might." Outside, the wind shifted. Birds flew over the scorched horizon. In the distance, the old world stirred. Elsewhere in the galaxy, life resumed, haltingly, cautiously. Not all imperial systems were gone. Not all leaders dead. But the core, the arrogance, the belief in superiority that had been uprooted. Human ships no longer hovered. They listened, monitored, observed. And when asked what the war had meant, Earth gave no official answer. Instead, humanity released a song. No title, no lyrics, just a girl's voice, imperfect, breaking at moments, trembling and true. The same melody that had played before the Martian relay went dark. It rippled through the stars. Some cultures banned it. Others wept. Aboard an isolated moon in Sector 9, a surviving warlord stood before a human envoy. He had seen 3 of his worlds vanish. His voice was hoarse from screaming at shadows. He said, "We underestimated your grief." The envoy, a young woman with a calm face and a neck tattoo that read librarian, replied, "No. You underestimated its direction." The emperor's spire stood half-broken, its tower sliced diagonally like a toppled monument. Inside, the emperor sat on a bench made of crystal shards, looking over what remained of his dominion. Helena visited him one final time. He didn't rise, didn't speak. She sat beside him. For a moment, neither moved. Then he asked, "What did I teach you?" She answered without hesitation, "That mercy has limits." He turned his head. "You killed billions." "No," she said. "You did. We just stopped you from doing it again." He closed his eyes. "It was a mistake." She nodded. "It always is." A long pause. "Will you finish us?" She smiled softly, a sadness there. "No. You'll do that yourselves." And she left. Not with guards. Not with fire. Just with a garden seed pressed into his hand. Back on Earth, an old woman stepped out onto her porch. She wore a patchwork shawl made from flags, some human, some alien. She poured tea. Watched children chase each other in the golden light. She had lost her daughter in the first wave. One of the 30. And yet she smiled. Because somewhere far above, the stars had gone quiet again, not with dread, but with peace. A whisper of stillness, of rebuilding, of something better than vengeance. The wind carried laughter through the trees. And in the ruins of empires, new things began to grow.